One of my specific pet peeves about comics, well, specifically comic book covers, is that it's become popular that they have no relation to the contents or story of the comic they actually appear on. It used to be common practice for publishers to take art they already had commissioned, for whatever reason, and use them on different stories. It acted like a stopgap, like a backlog. If one artist missed a deadline or a cover was rejected at a late date, or just not good enough for whatever reason, pick a reason, someone could dig into the bank of stored artwork and run an issue with it. It didn't even, strictly speaking, have to be related to the comic book in question. I never liked that practice, and it happened a lot when I was collecting as a younger guy. But I have to admit, there were covers I truly loved and bought, sometimes in spite of what was contained in the actual issue. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite covers ever came from this practice, and there's a particular X-Men cover by Mark Silvestri that comes to mind. It's a fantastic and simple image. It's extremely evocative. It's got great lighting, great, figure drawing and detail. But from what I remember, the issue it appears on, the cover doesn't actually depict anything that happens in that issue. It had the theme of that issue for sure, that the Brood were represented in some way, that Wolverine was indeed in that issue, and so were the Brood. That's all it kind of depicted. But did it depict any specific event in the comic itself? No. I've been publishing my own comics for years, and I absolutely wanted to commit to depicting some event or detail or moment from the interior pages. I just thought it was something I would appreciate as a reader. I know that for some comics, picking a big moment in the issue, written in a particular way, is the equivalent of putting a spoiler right there on the cover. But picking a panel that depicts something interesting versus something that is just not representative of the story is pretty easy for me. My graphic novel, Encoding Bushido, consists of 7 issues. Each one of them depicts a moment from the books they represent, and the process of doing that could not be simpler. I think any comic artist can relate to this idea that when you finish a page, sometimes there is a panel that just really sings in some way. Maybe it's a panel someone you showed it to in rough form reacted to. Maybe it's just a key moment. In all of my books, I compose the cover only after the interior pages have been laid out. Sometimes they're even fully inked. For Encoding Bushido, I actually didn't work on covers until the entire issue was inked per chapter. For at least one issue, I don't think I worked on the cover until the entire issue was colored. At that time, I would pick a panel, if I hadn't already, and use it for the basis of the cover idea. At least a few times, I picked 2 or 3 panels to make a simple collage of potential covers. Each of the covers also features a detail I only mentioned once on my friend Jeremy's channel. There was a graphic element I used that was meant to simulate slashes back and forth, kind of like slashing a sword back and forth, since Encoding Bushido features many a katana. It's just a diagonal slash across the page, allowing the bottom credits to mix into the design of the cover. It's also an even more subtle detail to emulate something about katanas. I really got into the weeds with katanas for this novel, and one of the more interesting details on the blade is that wavy pattern that floats down the cutting edge. It's called the hamon, and it's formed from the clay coating that covers the sword as it's being heated and tempered at a critical moment in its making. Right now, the only way to view them in this way and get that intention is if you look at all of them, all in a row. And I haven't printed each one under its own cover yet. Issue 1 actually sold out at WonderCon in its debut, and issue 2 is only on my website right now in print. But getting back to making these covers relate to the contents, I appreciate this might not be an option for some creators. In at least a few situations, I have heard of covers being made in a spectacular failure of communication. They end up being totally wrong. I have heard of people cutting moments altogether, making the cover make no sense at all. But my all-time favorite account is someone just didn't care for the story and decided to just make a cool pinup instead. Everyone's a critic, right? So I hope if you go on to make something like a graphic novel or a one-shot issue, or even a bit of pure prose, that you consider the cover in a similar way. In my opinion, it shows respect for both the material as well as the reader. All this said, when it comes to marketing a book, comics really do get judged by their covers. But I actually like the way certain publishers have rethought their entire cover identity in many ways to start standing out again. When you strip away all the trade dress, that's all the credits and all the writing basically on the cover. It sounds awful, but it's a practice that I, as an artist, kind of love. But I can definitely feel for the marketing department should this result in a reduction in sales. Retailers might hate the practice too, but every time I have ever walked into a comic book store, that sea of active noise on covers, it turns them all into noise. And to break away from that noise, if you know where your book is going to be, might actually be to your advantage. I don't know. You'd have to talk to your retailer. I get the traditions: big hero pose, big title, bright colors, catchy subtitle and tease. But there have been some modern and mind blowing covers in recent memory, and I would hate to see that practice end. For now, thanks for watching.